on the ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the neutral Attawandaron peoples, settled according to the dish with one spoon law, in effect in the Americas since at least the 12th century. All peoples sharing this territory are expected to take only what they need, to leave enough for others, and to peacefully protect the viability of the land for future generations. I have a couple of announcements. For those of you, I just learned of this course. It's a writing course on eco-grief at CAMH in Toronto, and it's an online course. I thought I would signal this to some of you because I know that some of you are feeling eco-grief. It looks good. It's, I believe, free. I tried to see, I believe it is free. And Jay Marie, in Slack, I put all these links at the bottom that you could, if you don't mind sharing in chat. More people are coming in. The other announcement is there's a writing course, Dialogues on Degrowth at York, and it looks really good. I signed up for it. So even if you don't sign up for it, you'll probably hear about it from me. So again, the link is at the bottom, and Jay Marie's going to post that for you. I'd like to start by thanking the Suzuki Foundation, the Future Ground Network, who supports us in what we do. They do all sorts of things for us. They give us a support network if we have problems. People all over Canada, other groups like us will help us. There are webinars, training, and tech support, and professional tools. This is the Future Ground meeting place. This is the Future Ground Zoom that we can use. And we can hold big meetings too. So they're very generous with us. And we'd like to thank them also for the financial support of our fossil fuels march in September. They were really good with us, really helpful. And this is us. And what we do, we connect Perth County groups. It's sort of like we're sort of a mini Future Ground. We connect our local groups. We support our groups by sharing technical skills. Like if you needed to do a meeting, we can work it out. We have monthly meetings. We have roundtable meetings like this one. These are recorded on our site. We've done things like electric vehicles, investments. We do a lot of that stuff. Anyway, it's on our site. You can find it on our site. And of course, we have web presences for smaller groups that really don't have the time, the money, or the knowledge to put up a website. We get the word out. We'll help you with a press release, help you with a media list, and we do our own special projects. And I just want to take a minute to talk about our special project before we go on to talk with Jason. And what we're doing right now, we're starting a new project, and it is a section of our website where we are collecting information and anything that will help who want to retrofit their home. So it's a 3-part section. There's an introduction to what actually retrofits are and what you can get grants to do. There's a section for homeowners, and there's also a section for renters and landlords. And there's also a list of inspectors and contractors. It's a draft. The thing about it is it's a draft. It's a community project designed for everybody to participate. So if you know somebody that you particularly trust that maybe knows how to put in a solar powered water heater, say, and you would like to recommend them, well, then you can get it up on our site so that people will be able to find them. Now, we brought this to the Energy and Environment Committee. I'm a member of the Energy and Environment Committee, and we were told that we couldn't do it through the city. And of course, makes sense because we can't be putting up businesses and things like that on the city website, which is why we decided to do it on the Perth County Hub. But we also want it to be a collaborative project. We want people to help us out because we want local stuff on there. We can find all sorts of stuff from Toronto and everything. But what we want to know is, what can you find locally? So we need your help. So if you've done a retrofit, if you're planning a retrofit, if you had problems with retrofit, that would be really good. If you can recommend an inspector or a contractor, that would be good. Or if you had a problem, I've got one article up there from someone I know in Brampton who had a lot of trouble getting a loan for his retrofit, and that's as useful. That's useful information for us. So we want to know what you did, what was good, and also what were the mistakes and what did you learn. So there it is. And I did a bit.ly link, Perth County retrofit, so you can find it. You can't find it through our site yet because it's not yet hooked up, but you can find it through that link. And I'll hook it up pretty soon. So you are warmly recommended and welcomed to contribute to this project. So please do. If you have any questions, just let us know. So one of the members of the Perth County Hub is the Stratford Affordable Housing Alliance. And Jason is here to speak to us today about what he learned at the conference in Toronto for the Canadian Network of Community Land Trust Association last month. And they came up with a lot of really, really useful stuff. Oh, but before we go to Jason, there's also SAHA announcements. Don't forget, there's a housing and homeless community consultation on the 23rd and a special meeting on December 7th on the official plan, which is kind of important. And if you can possibly go or participate in some way, it's important. Okay, and I'm going to now back out. So we're going to stop sharing. And here we all are again. And I'm going to let you just go, Jason.
Sounds good. All right. So 2 weekends ago, myself and co-founder Nikki, we went down to the National Summit on Community Land Trusts in Toronto. It was 3 days of about 8 to 10 hours a day information. And now I'm going to try and report some of what we've learned back to you without taking 3 days and 20-something hours to do it. So we're not going to cover everything today. What we're going to cover today is a few key points of organizations and movements that I've taken note of and I've had contact with that are looking to work in Stratford and combine in our local economy to help provide some more affordable homes. So the first one on that list is Fairbnb. So Fairbnb is a new form of short-term rental app for placing your rentals or finding a lodging when you're going to visit a place, like many people visit Stratford for our theater. And what happens there is with most B&B sites, they take a certain percentage when you book through them as how they make money. So what Fairbnb does is they charge that standard 15%, but they take 50% of their fees, which is 7.5%, and they donate that money to either a local community land trust or the National Community Land Trust Summit if there isn't a local land trust in that municipality. Now, I've sat down with the head of Fairbnb and discussed that we do not currently have a community land trust in Stratford. We are looking at it as a very promising possibility for more affordable housing in the long term, but in the short term, we don't have one, but we do have a need for affordable housing. And they have agreed to putting that money towards building affordable housing in our region or towards social services or any other efforts we might need that would turn into housing. They're also willing.
Can I interrupt you by just saying that some people don't know what a community land trust is?
Yep, I will get to that when I get into the actual land trust talk. But yeah, so with Fairbnb, they're willing to come down and give a direct presentation to both anyone on council, anyone within the region that would be interested, as well as any innkeepers, B&B hosts, any organizations that are involved in that region and that industry that wish to learn more. They are willing to come down and speak with us one-on-one. They do have certain regulations when it comes to STRs, but none of their regulations are as strict as the short-term rental bylaw that was recently passed. So far, all of their regulations would be more than met by just following what our local laws are. I'm going to go through each and every one of these points one at a time. So in the meantime, I want to allow people to ask questions if you'd like on each point, because the things I'm going to be talking about are very different from another, and it's going to be difficult to call 20 minutes back to the question you had on point one. So if anyone has any questions on Airbnb, now would be the time to ask. Yes, Barb.
So what you're saying is they're a platform for people to put their properties on, just like an Airbnb, or is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, they are a rental platform. So when someone's looking for a place to rent in Stratford and they type it into Google, that is one of the options that would come up that they could book through. So
So
that's
you said
basically how it works.
some issues with short-term rental accommodations right now having to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
What, okay, so every municipality has a different short-term rental bylaw. But it even, Jason, goes back further than that. And this is where we got in trouble with our short-term rental here in the city of Stratford. It was actually the zoning bylaw that was changed and opened up to allow for a greater number of houses to become short-term rental. What the city of Ottawa has done is they've really restricted it, and which we should do the same thing, is it should be an owner's property who he decides to rent it out. Right now, it's open to tenants on properties. It's not open to, it's open to, so it's not just an owner operator. You could be a renter on that property, and you could rent it out as a short-term rental if you look at the city's zoning bylaw. So we have a lot of issues that I'm hoping that we can all work together to try and, because we know that we're losing housing, not just from a rental, but from an initial wanting to purchase some of the lower price ranges. So I think we need to have a really wholesome discussion, and I don't want to take this over, but Jason, I think we have an opportunity to really work together hand in hand, because it's really complicated and we need to make some massive changes if you want to actually stand a chance of getting some affordability right now in Stratford.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I know that when they passed, like I believe there was a 2-year grace period on the new short-term rental regulations that the city has passed. I wasn't aware that they had put nothing in there. I knew that it had to be a primary residence and it could only be rented up to 28 days straight, and it could only be rented so many days of the year. I wasn't aware that none of those actually covered the need for the owner to be the one renting. That seems to be quite a big a short-sighted view in the regulations. Mind you, to get a license, you do require a certain level of insurance on the property in order to register it as an STR with the city, or else you're operating illegally. So that might be one of the ways that we're going to be catching people that aren't actually owners of a property, not having an STR license, right? Now, of course, that's not being enforced yet. To work with Airbnb, you would have to be the owner of the property, right? Like they are not going to give out that listing to someone that isn't meeting their requirements. And their requirements, like I said, it does match the city's, but I would love to have that conversation with you, and I'd also love to get that conversation going with the people at Airbnb, because they are very interested with the tourism industry we have here and the need for affordable housing we have here. The real point they're trying to get across is we shouldn't have this constant battle between affordable housing and STRs, where we're seeing long-term housing leave the market and turn into STRs, and then families are struggling. They really want to see that tourism industry in Stratford helps fund the affordable housing that's needed in Stratford. And so it's not this constant back and forth between landlords saying, well, I can make this much doing this way, and tenants saying, well, I'm paying this much in rent because there's a shortage because they're turning into STRs, right? So yeah, definitely contact me. If you have a pen and paper, I can put my email in the chat quickly.
Sharon will send it to me.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, she'll send you my personal email or my phone number. If you'll give me a call, let's set this up. And I can get you in contact with the head of the Airbnb as well, because yeah, the tourism
Because
industry out here, they're very interested.
even their name is sort of, their name is a challenge for Airbnb, because it sounds like B&Bs aren't being fair. Actually, B&Bs are fully regulated. It's the short-term rental that's taken the quick U-turn. So I'm not sure why, other than Airbnb, and Airbnb started off with B&Bs, but
That's
really,
literally it. It was just a play on the words for Airbnb to be about how it's being used to create like a fair economy. Right. That's the reason for the name. It was just a play on words. I get what you're saying, right? The difference between Airbnbs and STRs, but I mean, to a lot of places out there, Airbnb is the only thing they have. A lot of places don't have operating B&Bs, right? We're kind of different that way, and that's why they want to come out here and talk with us.
okay, I'll let you go on. Thanks.
Yep. Is there any other questions on this topic from anyone? Okay, we're gonna move on. The next topic I have up for us is one that involves our new official plan and the changing of bylaws. And that has to do with two companies that I got in touch with, which is People Design Co-op and rehousing.ca. And so as of Bill 23, all municipalities with 100,000 or more citizens automatically have changed in their zoning laws without city council's consent or need to be involved, that any home can now turn their property into a multi-unit home up to 3 units without requiring any zoning changes or speaking to anyone. Now, below 100,000, Bill 23 doesn't affect it. So I don't know what Stratford's numbers will be. I know that Toronto specifically jumped up to 4, and anywhere of 100,000 or more as of Bill 23 is now 3. So one thing we're going to have to look out for on December 7th, or one thing we're going to have to try and talk with on council, is trying to state that we would like to get this number increased, because as of today, the last numbers I've been given, which I don't have in front of me and I haven't personally checked, so I 100% can't quote me on this, but I believe our utilization rate of housing is only 30%, which means that on average, we would have a 3-bedroom home in which only one of the bedrooms is actually being used to occupy someone, which means that looking at going with companies like Rehousing, which will come in, and what they do is they deal with licensing, inspections, quotes, and repairs and adjustments to turn a home into a multi-unit home rapidly and for less price. For them to come into a place like Stratford, where it's 30% utilization, that means that there's a lot of area to create new rentals where they didn't previously exist. And in doing so, it helps a lot, especially with the older population we have in Stratford. There's a large problem when it comes to isolation of seniors. There's a large problem when it comes to not being able to age in place, as homes with multi-level floors and all that become less and less viable for older citizens. And on top of that, we know that pensions and other forms of funding that have been going to our seniors have just not kept up with inflation. And a lot of seniors are relying on reverse mortgages or equity gains that they had in order to stay in their homes. This really helps offset the cost of that retirement, offset the cost of living, as well as keeping them more integrated into society and near other people so that they can have a better quality of life. Now, the closest place to Stratford that's actually using this project, they aren't doing it specifically with the company Rehome, but they are doing it themselves, is Wellington. Wellington has done this as their attainable housing plan, like the one that we currently have with Invest Stratford that I haven't any updates since they gave multiple options on. This is the option Wellington's doing. So what they're going to do is they're going to give $10,000 to $15,000 in payment for every home that can be turned into a new rental unit that didn't previously exist. However, in exchange, they have set limits on what the rent can be for a certain period of time. This works really well to help increase our utilization while lowering the cost, like the amount of emissions and carbons that being emitted by having all these new builds. 30% of the emissions in Canada, as far as I believe it's 30%, if I check my notes here, 30% of emissions in Canada come from building. So as we crank up the number of builds we're having, like we've gone from 67,500 was the median each year before Ford was elected to now over 100,000 new builds a year. While housing has still gone up over 200%, rental has gone up over 200%. That same amount of time, we've doubled the number of builds. So we are producing far more emissions while not lowering the cost of housing. Doing it in a program like Rehome helps keep that cost down and keeps our emissions down by utilizing the land we have and the buildings we have, rather than constantly requiring new builds to find affordability. So that's Rehome. And what we're going to try and do with that one is we're going to keep an eye on the new bylaws and try and make sure the city allows zoning for at least up to 3 units, including en suites, without requiring any form of zoning change or requiring going to the city, which would be awesome. And we'd also like to really look at, or I'm personally going to be trying to get a hold of Invest Stratford, and I believe her name's Jody, who's running the Attainable Housing Project, and see if they have looked at the Rehome program or looked at Wellington's plan, and see if that can be intricated into some of it as well, so we can try and find some funding to make it so that homeowners aren't taking a lot of this bill brunt on, because putting $10,000 out to get this renovations done isn't an option for some people. Any questions on this topic?
Good
Yeah,
topic.
I have a question, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I have a question. This money that you can have to turn your home into a multi-unit, would that be if you wanted to share the cost of the house, like to sell part of your house? Would that still be covered, or just for rentals?
The way that Wellington is doing it and the Rehome project's doing it in Toronto is it is just for rentals. So they are giving you that money in order to make renovations to make a legal apartment in a home that didn't have a separate unit before. So that's what the funding's for.
And is there a length of time that you have to rent it out for?
That really depends on the project, right? So some people are doing this because Bill 123 allows all municipalities over 100,000 to do this immediately without any requirement of funding. Some places are just doing it and they're renting it for as long as they want, as high as they want. It's an open market, right? However, when using at funding like from Perth-Wellington, I believe it's 10 years. And from the Rehome project, I believe they're putting perpetual affordable. So they have regulations ongoing because they'll cover a larger portion of the funds required, and they'll come in and do the renovations and everything and the licensing and everything themselves. But yeah, it really does come down to what each municipality decides to do or where you're getting your funding from.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions on rehoming and attainable housing? I don't think I can see everyone. If anyone has their hand up, let me look over. I'm not seeing anything. Okay, cool. We will move on then to the next one in my plan, which was, yes, controlling equity gains long-term on new builds. So ever since I first ran for council, I've been running on this idea of let's build wartime homes again. Probably not call them that because that's not a great name anymore. But the point is to build smaller homes at cheaper price points using municipal land and builders such as Habitat for Humanity, etc., to build homes at smaller price points for middle-class families to buy. Right now, 94% of the population that doesn't have equity can't afford to purchase a home anywhere in Perth-Wellington. You have to be in the top 5% of income earners or already have equity in order to purchase or put offers on any property available. So we need to build homes that are for working families. And in doing so, let's say we went out and we spent a bunch of, like Habitat for Humanity is doing it with the city of Waterloo, where they're donating the land and Habitat for Humanity is building the properties and they're going to sell them at 50% of the market cost. Right? So it's being done other places. Now, what do they do to keep those places affordable so that the person that buys it doesn't turn it into a rental income property right away and doesn't actually live in it, or turns around and sells it within 5 years and sells it at full market and makes $400,000 on one single real estate deal in 5 years. This was the hardest question I had going into this. So community land trusts, what they would do is they wouldn't, if you were building a community land trust and selling the properties, it's very difficult to get mortgages for them, because unlike in the US and Canada, mortgages are generally based on the land. So if you're not selling the land, you can't get a mortgage, which means we can't control these properties through a trust. In Ontario, I should say. However, I have been in touch with a group out of Whitehorse, Yukon, who have just finished making a whole bunch of new builds that they plan to rent and sell. And they have written up a legal contract which has case law to back it, which controls equity gain based on inflation. Which means they're sending me this over to me. I'm going to try and get a hold of city staff and see if I can send it to their legal team, as well as a personal lawyer I have, and have this looked over, because they stated they do have case law. And since the provincial regulations changed for them, they don't require this paperwork whatsoever. So they're willing to give it to us for free. And what we can basically do with this is, when we build these new homes at lower price points and sell them, we can regulate the equity gains every year to tying it to something like rent increases. So rent increases this year were 2.5%, which means the equity gain on that property would be 2.5% this year. If it was that for the entire, let's say 10 years straight at 2.5%, you'd be at 25% equity gain over 10 years. Now, the standard before we had the housing situation we have now was 12.5% a year. So that's a massive reduction in the cost of housing increase each year, let alone the most recently, we've been up to over 200% when you look at it a 4 to 5 year gain. So 2.5% means that for the homeowners, they still get equity gains, they're still gaining ownership, and they're still feeling like they have a part of the community that's theirs. However, it's not going to be the Wild West anymore, where properties are doubling, tripling in cost, being bought and flipped crazy. And we can make sure that the money that we invest as a community using tax dollars to build, or the municipal land that we own to build these new homes, is regulated in a way that we get a return on our investment long term. And it's not just a one-off that we invested in. Is there any questions on equity control in new builds? We just skip over to the next page because there's a lot of people. No, cool. That's an easy one. That's good. That's great. Last.
You know, there was I have a question. You still didn't tell us what a CLT is.
That's this one right now. So now we're going to get into community land trusts. Okay, so first and foremost, how long have community land trusts existed? The first one that I have in Canada was put in, well, in the US in 1960, Georgia's when we have some of the first land trusts in the Americas come up. In Canada, our first one comes in 1975 with the New Roots Community Land Trust. Oh, Sandra, I'm sorry, buddy. You can play the truck right now. So, community land trust, what they mean. So basically with a land trust, it is normally a 99-year lease that's put on a large portion of land that's owned by the community and regulated by the community within it. So quite often what happens with a community land trust, or how they start, is with acquisitions. And that is something that SAHA is looking at finding funding for, as well as keeping an eye on the market to see if anything comes up for it. And sorry guys, I have a 2-year-old talking to me. Anyway, so with community land trust, that we'll look at apartments that are going up for sale that are currently renting at cheaper prices, and where fear could have their rents doubled or have large amounts of rent evictions when they hit the market and then no longer be affordable. And we would look at purchasing them and then holding them within a trust. That trust is owned by the people that live there. It's kind of similar to co-ops. If you were familiar with them, they're long existed in places like Toronto. Community land trusts are governed by their own body. There's several ways to do it, but the most standard way is to have a makeup of members that all have invested interest in the region. So that could be Everyone that rents there could be a voting member, and members of the community that are not living there can be non-voting members. Sometimes you can have members of the community that are voting members. And the governing body of it is the one that makes decisions, such as like in Parkdale, they have decisions every year on whether or not they're even going to increase the rent at all. Like they'll have a full meeting if they're going to increase the rent whatsoever, let alone the 2.5% the province sets. They also have meetings on things like, is eviction going to be something they do? Can they afford to never have to evict anyone? If they have families that aren't paying rent, are they going to have discussions about evictions, or is the land trust between the community bringing in enough that they don't need to have that conversation? Every land trust is governed differently, and every land trust generally has different rules and regulations. The most a familiar way that like the wealthy would use their land trust is a golf course. So for wealthy individuals, land trust, that's a golf course, right? For lower and middle class, we look at land trusts for housing. We look at land trusts for agriculture. We do have a larger meeting on the community land trust planned in the Perth-Wellington area, in which we're going to have some representatives from the national community land trust circuit come down and speak. And that is going to be a joint meeting between ourselves and the National Farmers Union Oxford Perth local. So we are planning on having this large talk because we want to look at community land trusts as an option for agriculture in Perth-Wellington, as well as an option for rentals, and even, if possible, with banking, some home ownership. I've only found one bank so far out of Vancouver that is willing to give mortgages to properties on land trusts, in that the person mortgaging it would own it and not the community. However, banking for land trusts in general, there are several options out there that we're looking at, as well as some other community gains. I tried to make that simple. It's hard to explain. If you know what a co-op is, that's what a community land trust is. That's the easiest way. Is there any questions on what a community land trust is before we move on land trusts? Just so I can try and see where there might be confusion.
Well, I think there are some land trusts that are, you said they were agricultural.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the Parkdale Community Land Trust, I believe it's the Parkdale one, is currently making a small garden area as part of one of their land trusts. There are land trusts in like towards BC and all that are more agriculture directly. There's also what was it going to call Kensington Market is held in a trust. They have several buildings in Kensington Market held in a trust. And Chinatown in Toronto is now slowly becoming a budgeting land trust. With several of the people that have been living and renting in Chinatown for a long time were at risk. And so a young woman who I had the pleasure of meeting went out and created a trust, and they've started to buy up their own properties and make sure that the community can stay there.
Mm-hmm. So things like the local and the food forest that the local maintains down at the city, would that fall under that sort of category?
No.
It could. If the I'm not sure what the structure of the local is. I don't know if they have like a private benefactor that works with them, or they're all registered under a non-profit. But it could technically. I don't know for sure. I haven't been able to like discuss with them what their exact governing structure is on it.
Because there's housing for sure, but there's also food forests and food security thing to
oh yeah, no, all of those things could be held in trust. Like if we were looking at farmland that was at risk of being developed and the community didn't want it to be developed, like if it was a necessity that we require, and we had the options of building up and everything else that we can do to avoid taking more farmland, we could definitely look at purchasing that farmland as part of the trust. When the land trust actually has wealth to do it. The good thing about them is that generally once they start going, they grow pretty quickly. Like Parkdale, and for example, they started off with only one building. Next thing you know, They have, I believe, 300 units or something like that, 268 units that they now control. In BC, there's ones like that where they started off with 1-2 buildings, and now they're up to like 5,000 units are all within that land trust control, and they're all perpetually affordable. So it really depends. Like, got to start somewhere. Normally start small with them with a small acquisition and then just build. Because while we're talking about how unaffordable housing has become, even the people that are paying affordable rates of rent, that's still bringing in money, right? Like, we're talking today about how a 2-bedroom goes for 2,600, and that's crazy. And people say, well, look at the price of a new home. That explains why it's 2,600. But there's properties that have been owned for 20 or 30 years that are also now going for over 2,000 a month, and they're profitable at 800, right? And that's what we're looking at with trusts. Once you get to that point where you're profitable, that money just goes into the trust, stays in the trust, and then is used to help protect more land. Catherine and Larry, I see a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how much money do individuals need to have to be part of a land trust?
Absolutely nothing. You don't require any money to be part of a land trust. You can be a member of a land trust just because you're a concerned local citizen. In many trusts, you could also be a member of a land trust just because you are living in a property that's owned by a land trust. Quite often, what will happen with land trusts is they will look at properties that are at risk of no longer being affordable, purchase them, and then let everyone that's already in that building continue to live there and continue to pay their current rate of rent, and just make sure that it stays that way and stays affordable, and they immediately become a member of the trust. Barb? You are still muted, Barb.
It's been a while since I've done this. May I suggest that you might want to consult with the conservation authorities? While I was elected official of the Region Appeal, we did do land trusts. And the largest landowners within Ontario are actually the conservation authorities. So they've got it figured out how it actually works. So I'm just going to put that bug in your ear, Jason, that might be another way of talking to somebody to find out how, because you started talking about conservation of agricultural land, etc. That might be a resource for you. I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did not realize that they were under the heading of a trust. I'm definitely gonna look into that more and talk to the National Summit, because in 3 days we didn't bring up the fact that those are all held in trust, and that's pretty cool.
A lot of them are, and they're usually deals done with developers. And Sharon, shut your ears, you're not going to like this one. But so if say Credit Valley, who I dealt with, had this parcel of land, and Mr. Iggy Kenneth didn't want that parcel of land because he couldn't develop it, he would give that to Credit Valley Conservation Authority, and they would give him land that maybe wasn't supposed to be developed further down the chain in exchange for that. So that was a land trust. I didn't like those kind of deals, but that's what's going on. But it might be a resource for you, is what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be really good to look at. Like, I know the Agricultural Society, like, they're really interested in having the national team come down and give presentations on land trust, because they're looking at that as an option for them. Whereas SAHA, we're more specifically looking at it for perpetual affordability. However, it would be awesome to get a mutual trust going between the two that can help protect agriculture and affordability. Where we're using one to help fund another and protect each other. But the first thing with that really comes down to funding. Our main, at the weekend long summit, the funding person was not me. I did not go to the funding one, despite my love of memorizing numbers. We had to split and assess, and Nikki was the one that went to the funding one. She's the one that's giving discussions on that right now, was prepared to see what we can do and what our options are for an acquisition going forward. I'm more looking at what can we do with existing structures that are privately owned, as well as what can we do with new builds. Which, speaking of new builds, currently we are writing our proposal for council, which follows into our petition, which hopefully everyone here has seen or signed. And with that, we have decided our new language for the petition for council will be along the lines of a committee created for the purpose of creating perpetually proportionally mixed affordable housing using municipal land. And we plan on presenting that through subcommittee and then to council itself. We are still in discussions on whether or not that will start in a subcommittee through social services or subcommittee through the planning and heritage committee. We are still in the meeting one-on-one with counselors as we go, and so far it is looking good. And it would be really, really nice if this moves forward into the new year and we have a committee formed in charge of dealing with the most important pressing issue we have in the economy today. That would be awesome. The federal government until 1993 built 10% of all homes. They were the #1 home builder in the country. They stopped in 1993 and handed it to the provinces. The provinces in Ontario, specifically under Mike Harris, didn't do anything about that. And so now it's been 20 years and we see what happens, or 30 years, we see what happens after 30 years of a loss in social housing being built. And it's come down to a point where entire generations don't have options. And where you could go to door in every rental and say, if you lost where you're paying rent today, could you afford a new place tomorrow? And you're going to get a lot of no's, a lot of people that are at risk of being homeless. And so it'd be nice. Well, someone has to do it. So it's going to have to be the municipality, because we can't wait 4 years for a different province to try. We can't wait 2 years for a different federal government to try. It's not being picked up. Just today, Doug Ford came out and said that the federal government trying to give money like they did to London for these new builds was overstepping. So they're fighting with each other. And while they do that, we really need to look at it at a municipal level where we know our land, we know our needs, and we can do it and get it done. All right.
Can I
Yeah,
just
so
interject? Ken has been giving us some really good comments in the chat, and I just wanted to read one that kind of connects to the thing that we talked about at the beginning. December 7th is the meeting on the official plan, and that's an important date that people should really be looking into. So Ken says we really need to know our unique demographics so that we target the right kind of housing. The city adopted its last comprehensive review of the official plan in 2016, known as Official Plan Amendment 2021, and plans for growth in the city to the year 2033. Expectation is population growth to 41.5. Between 21.3 and 22.9% of the population is expected to be over the age of 65 by 2030, according to Stats Can. We have between 1/2 to 2/3 of our city taking in less than a living wage right now.
Yep. Yeah. The 23rd or the 7th is a very important date to remember as far as bylaws go and the city's official plan. It's funny, actually, there's been some back and forth between some SAHA members and Matthew Ray on what the definition of affordable is. That was up for debate until October 28th. There was multiple options listed by the province under an ERO on what the new definition of affordable would be. None of them were the previous definition, which was 30% of a household's income. And if you look at Stratford's official plan, if you read the plan in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, it always defines affordable as 30% of a household income. As of 2020, it defined it as 80% of market. Now, when the city goes to find funding for new builds and projects that they want to define as affordable, they have to do it under their definition in order to receive funding, which means the city to fund new projects has to define it at 80% of market, which if you're not tying affordability to the like someone's income, it's not affordable. 80% of market's affordable to a lot of people. It's not affordable to everyone. And if you don't have an affordable definition that is affordable for everyone, you're leaving some people on the street. So be sure to email Matthew Ray, since he's the assistant to the housing minister, and let him know that the definition of affordable was 30% of household income up until the province started messing with it in 2020. And we'd like it to go back because just like license plates and everything else they've been messing with lately, it burns to the ground and then we have to start over. License plates, greenbelt, I can name a few, but I don't want to get too much into that. I'm not going to get too biased on this. I'm just going to say the definition of affordable should have income geared to it in some way. But yeah, the 23rd is the meeting on homelessness that the city's putting on. I'm very excited about that. I hope to see everyone there. That'd be a great way to learn. I'm going to be there in a learning aspect and ask questions. And then the 7th is the new proposals for bylaw changes. And that would be a great way to remind them about things like the rehome project and what they're doing in Wellington, and being able to utilize existing structures to the maximum so that we can provide more affordable housing without too much carbon emissions, and focus our new builds on being deeply affordable. Any other questions, comments, general concerns? I know this was a lot. This isn't even half, but it's what I wanted to try and touch on right away, because just let some people know how things are moving forward, what things are going on. There's some really cool projects happening locally. If you look at Kitchener, has the Better Tent City, which is now looking at regrouping into a form of trust, because the last time they had tiny homes, it was all under the ownership of one man. And then when that man passed away, unfortunately, everyone was evicted. And with the new one, it's all under the run by one woman, and now it's being done on a Catholic school board land. So they're trying to turn it into a trust and bring in a new form of self-governance so that it can't collapse like it did before. Barb, do you have a question?
No, just a comment. To look closer to home, Jason, you should look at New Hamburg. They actually are doing a whole renovation retrofit on the mill there, and they will be, the income, the rent for those, for the apartments, they're looking at $500 a month, because an existing building standing is really one of the only sure ways you can actually get affordability. And the New Hamburg, sorry guys, New Hamburg Council recognized that their existing building could be put to better use. And so, yeah, $500 a month. And that's just 5 miles down the road. So it's a good example.
Just think how many of those we could get into Avon Crest. They weren't going to blow it up and put asbestos all over the neighborhood.
And I'm thinking of people for the winter right now. I mean, that would have been a perfect place to house all those people that are out in the woods off of TJ Doland, and that just totally upsets me. Anyways, thank you.
Well, one
Jason.
sec. We'll switch to Jane. I'll get with you in a minute. But Barb, I wanted to comment that is awesome. I do want to find out on the 23rd, because I know that we have the small encampment in Stratford, and from people in that encampment, they've stated that they've gone in and they provided housing to everyone that was there, with the exception of one woman who disagreed to take part in any of the things that were offered to them. So I am looking forward to finding out on the 23rd what they did. I'm hoping it's not more of just the Rose Court and Travelers, but I'll find out on the 23rd, because apparently when it was downtown and there was that tent or encampment, that they found a solution. So I would love to hear what it is. Long term, I would like to do tiny homes. I have spoken on it before. I've looked at a company called Bunky Life, where we could look at $5,000 a unit as the build cost to provide housing. $5,000 per head is very affordable when you look at the fact that most people already qualify for OW, which would cover within 10 years more than that and plenty more to repay the city. Jane, you had a question or comment?
It was just a clap for what Barb was saying.
Okay, I thought it was a hand up. Bonnie, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to comment, when they go around, I think there was 5 encampments in town. When they go around, they offer the people housing. And sometimes what they have to do is they put them into the motels while they fill out their paperwork and get ready. Or if they're people that have already had paperwork, they might be moving right into a place. But there are some people that refuse to go in. You know, they they like living outdoors, and sometimes they'll come in if it's really bitter cold, but generally other than that, they'll stay out. But that's how they generally works. I hope that clears that up.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I realize that there's like there, especially Stratford Connect and all that, they do great work. They do find a lot of long-term housing for some individuals. I also know that there is some holdback on certain individuals thinking that this housing is going to be regulated in some way or another, or they don't feel like they personally own it, which is why I like tiny homes, because that gives them a unit number and address that is theirs. They can receive mail, they have a lock on the door, and that lock is for their place. I also know that that's something we offer in some long-term care or long-term facilities that are fully rentable. And I also know that the city has been in talks more about supporting more supportive housing, which is awesome and a completely different need that the city has. Sorry, Bonnie, did you have something else to state quickly?
I just wanted to say quickly that the tiny homes, like, no developers come forward with that yet, or that proposal or anything. And the city itself have just been working off whatever the grants the current government has. And it would be, I think it looked like we're seeing different cities that are trialing them. And I know they ran into a problem in, I think it's either Kitchener-Waterloo, I forget, don't quote me there, but they built these homes and they're supposed to be temporary to move them into like transitional homes, but then the people don't want to leave them. So that creates sort of another hurdle they're trying to work on, right? So that, it's like you get used to some place, and I mean, a tiny home is going to be so much greater than, living on the street. When I was out in Vancouver, I went out there because they were having something on social housing, and I went, and they were taking over places like 7-Eleven and motels and things like that, and making them, and they got the Olympic rooms that they used, and they made one unit was 2 rooms, and the one part was like the kitchen living room, and the other part was bathroom bedroom, right? And the only request that the homeless people wanted was that the bed wasn't closed, so they made sure they put a wall in front of the bed. So there's a lot of projects going on, but in Vancouver, what they did was or Victoria actually, they had 7 NGOs, non-government organizations, the provincial government, the municipality, they had the Builders Association, I forget, there's another 2, and they're all working together to do that. And that's, what we need really to help spearhead that. Like, I know there's certain builders in town, they work with the city and build, they don't put like, I don't want how to word that. I don't want to say fancy features in the home. So they are, if you look at Pool Construction, for instance, one example, his buildings are always more affordable than other ones. So they,
Yeah.
they try to.
I actually know which developer you're talking about. I've had a talk with the owner, and yeah, he does. He redevelops old apartments or builds new ones, and then he rents it directly to the city so that he doesn't have to deal with the tenants in any way, and he's assured of payment. That's awesome. What you're talking about in Kitchener was actually what I was speaking about before. So they, one individual decided to allow tiny homes on his property for the homeless. And so the homeless were all living there, and it wasn't meant to be temporary. This was meant to be their tiny homes they can live in. The city could try and find them more housing if they wanted, but they could have that. And that's the key, is that it shouldn't be temporary. If someone wants to stay in a tiny home forever, that's fine. Let them stay in it forever. Design it in a way that it isn't costing money, and it actually, like the designs I'm looking at, are actually revenue generating, so we can put it back into the community. Design it that way so they don't have to leave. What happened in Kitchener is the man that owned the property and allowed the small homes to be on it passed away, and the new owners came in and they tried to evict everyone, and that's why they didn't want to leave, because there wasn't a new solution for them. They were just saying, you're back on the street now because the man that owned it passed away. So a woman whose business was suffering under COVID actually took it under her belt to open up her business and house the homeless. And then now that's developed into where they are staying now, which is on secondary schools, and they're trying to redevelop that tiny home program there. However, when they're doing this now, since it's still run again by one woman, they're trying to bring in a land trust and do it that way, which is where, if we did the tiny homes in Stratford, I would like to do it or see it done through a trust. Would be the best way to keep it perpetually affordable and make sure that any new ownership can't come in. You put it on the 99-year lease. It's a 99 years of perpetual affordability. And that is what we need, the community that's tasked with using municipal land to create professionally affordable, proportionally mixed income housing, right?
Well, I
That's
know,
one of
like,
the things that that committee should be looking at. That's who should be tasked with it. And that's why I want the city to do that. I have tons of information from Bunk Life, tons of information from developers and what it would cost to have a residential main building that provides water and everything. And I'm happy to hand that over to the committee the day it's formed, whether I'm on it or not. Here you go. Here's the work I've been doing. Take it and run.
well, you're doing a lot, and like we work with Indowell too, so we're looking at hopefully that we could have a project. And I had suggested East Gore down at the other end there, because there's a long stretch on the north side, and then there's another little stretch on the right side. And I don't know if any of you have been in any of the Indowell, but a bunch of us went over to Woodstock several years ago, and they have like the place where everybody goes to learn about finances and how to feed themselves and clean and different stuff. And once they sort of, I'll call it, graduate from there, they actually have townhouses that they can go to next, where they, you know, are still getting help. And then eventually they can move out into homes and society type thing. But it's a great model. I think they're in around 7 different cities now. And they're,
Yeah,
you know,
supportive
looking at,
housing,
yeah.
what you're speaking about there, supportive housing is absolutely something we need to look at. And I'm so glad that I've heard that the city is getting more in favor of working with supportive housing. However, any housing that has any restrictions, even just supportive, it doesn't encompass everyone, because there's some people that will say no to that. Just, I see 3 things I have to respond to. Number 1, Paul Brown, you had the United Way and SAHA collaborating. So the United Way is not allowed to campaign for themselves because they're a nonprofit. However, the correspondence being done between United Way and Nikki are the 2 that are speaking, and she's the one that's dealing with them directly. I can't speak to what's happening with them because, like I said, they're a nonprofit, and so that gets like, there is regulations on what they can or can't say. And so I'm not in a place to be able to say anything about it whatsoever, but I do know that we would love to work with United Way. Also, Red Cross, Habitat for Humanity, Stratford Connect, Stratford House of Blessing. There is a ton of things that we could look at for funding or look at working together. United Way just finished their build in Listowel, and I know that Stratford's one of the places that might be eyeing as one of the next spots in Perth-Wellington to develop on. So that's something the committee, if formed, could handle, and that would be awesome. But I can't say anything directly. Jane Marie, I know your hand was up. You're good? Okay, Sharon, you had your hand up.
My question is really a question to everybody. I'm particularly like the idea of a community land trust. It seems to me that that is something, you know, that you have, that's kind of a middle thing, whereas not a homeless thing, and it's for the middle people. And it seems to me a way of really having stability over a long period of time. However, I'm wondering, we're a small rural town or a small rural city. I'm wondering what people think about the community owning the land and people renting it. They only own the house and they don't own the land. It smacks of liberalism. It smacks of radicalism. And I'm just wondering, am I right? Is that going to, are there
I
people
think
who
Alex
react to it that way?
gave a like 1 week long rant about how the future in the Great Reset is that no one will ever actually own anything, and everything will just be owned by the government. You'll have no job and you'll eat bugs. Yeah, I remember that. That is a concern that a lot of people on certain aspects of the political have.
About
I
that
will.
election? Did you talk to people about that?
I would say that if you're concerned about owning, then go compete in the market to own. Right. We are looking at affordable homes that we're going to try and sell at 50% of market. Like the goal I'm setting is for 350,000 to be the sell price of a home that a family can purchase. It would obviously be 1,000 square feet, later 800 to 1,200 square feet. It's going to be smaller, but that price point for middle class families to purchase and feel ownership and own the land, I think, is great. But there needs to be options for renters and for everyone else as well, right? And so the housing crisis, like the best way to attack any crisis is you start with the most at risk and then work your way back.
I agree with you with all of that, but my question really is about support for the idea. You know, are people, I mean, do you have a feel for the community, how they were going, oh, I don't know about this, everybody's got to pay their fair share, you know, those kind of people, you know?
Well, community land trusts aren't aided by the government generally, like they are when it comes to quick acquisitions and stuff like that to protect at-risk places. But on their ongoing day-to-day tasks are all self-funded by charging rent, right? Like they're still charge rent to the people that live there, and they still pay that rent, and that rent is still more than enough to cover the costs of maintenance and cover the costs of even acquisitions of other places and growth, right?
So what you're
No.
saying is that's got to be publicized. That's got to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not a free ride. Like people still have to pay rent. It's just we would like their rent to be something they can afford.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. I'm just thinking about the optics of it because it's a new thing.
Oh yeah, I hear you. I mean, I couldn't get in a room and talk with it with Alex Jones, but I'd probably be able to talk with anyone else that's willing to listen. And there's a little bit left of Alex Jones, right? I don't think like the housing right now is affecting everyone. Like everyone's worried where their grandchildren going to be, right? Are their children going to be able to stay in the same city as them or province or country as them with what's happening in housing? It's affecting everyone now, and all generations are starting to see just how bad it's gotten and be worried. So and that's across the political spectrum, right? Whether or not the solutions are across the political spectrum is different, but I'm not doing this with any particular party. I'm doing this with just hours and hours and days or weeks of hours of research, and then seeing what's working, what's not, what people are doing, and trying to go from there. Anyways, is there any other questions that anyone has on anything we've discussed today? Like I said, this is only about half of the information we're going to have coming out in the next little while. And then we are
a lot of information can be put on the webpage. If you missed that, SAHA has a section of the Perth County hubs. They have their own page in there, and you'll probably be wanting to do some more information up there too as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure tomorrow I'm going to get a call from Nikki with like 20 things that I missed that I was supposed to fit into this very brief talk that I've been having for the last hour, where we've only talked like about half of what we have. But like I said, we're also looking in the new year. We were going to do another meeting this month for SAHA, where we were going to have a public meeting, have public discussions and stuff like that. But because of what's been released on the homelessness meeting with the city, and then the rescheduling to the December 7th on the public bylaw one, we've decided that it's not going to work out timing wise, and with Christmas coming, it's not going to work out till the new year. So in the new year, we are going to have a meeting, and we are planning on having a large meeting with the National Community Land Trust team coming down to speak and give presentations. I'd also like to have Fairbnb down to give presentations, which they're willing to do. And Rehome has sent me their slides, so I will have their slides and information. I will also have the legal paperwork for equity control on new builds. All of this stuff is going to be coming. And we'd like to have one big meeting where anyone that wants to learn more can come, bring your pads, bring your papers, pick up pamphlets, learn everything you can, because I can't memorize all of it, and I do forget things sometimes. Ken.
Yeah, one of the big concerns I've got is how do we get the attention of people in Stratford to this issue in a positive way? Let's be, serious about this. There's about 25 people on these kinds of meetings. Hardly anybody goes to budget meetings. The city is doing strategic planning, all kinds of stuff that should be consulted widely with the electorate. In the election, you got less than half the people voting. Stratford is a very apathetic city. I don't know how else to say it. And how are we going to actually energize and motivate people to get involved in something? Because I think we're in a kind of a fatigue status right now. Healthcare is dead. There's wars going on. There's pandemics. There's this, there's that. This is like the apocalypse, the end days. How are we going to get anybody's attention? And when you talk about scheduling and stuff, we're hitting into this December season, which is where everybody forgets about anything that has to do with city politics, planning, or whatever. We all pat ourselves on the back. We donate some money to food banks and things like this. And then the day after New Year's, we go back to being sour and grumpy.
Yeah.
I really don't know how we motivate this city. This is the least motivated city that I have ever lived in, and I've lived in a lot. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so I would say that it's not as dark and gloomy. We wanted to compare the voting numbers for my hometown of Brantford County, Brantford City, last municipal election. It was 23%. So 50% is pretty good in comparison. It's more than double. But I mean, so we have multiple social media campaigns we're doing as well as other campaigns, right? So currently right now we have the petition, which I don't have the numbers in front of me. Maybe Sharon does on what we have signed, registered with her. I have even more in my car. We've been doing multiple campaigns, which we would love for people to help with. Number one, we have a campaign going forward. We're trying to get people to take selfies or videos of themselves with their stories and their struggles they've been having with housing, or someone they know that's been struggling with housing, so that we can try and put faces to the problems. Another one we've been doing is called Sing for SAHA. So we've been going out to markets and other local events, and we've been having little a cappella groups go together and collect signatures while we're there to try and raise awareness. And then on top of that, we have these things that we've been doing. I've also literally just been going with a pen and paper door to door and just, hey, how's it going? Are you concerned about housing? And people are concerned. So we're getting out there. It's just kind of do what we can. And that's why, like you said, December's coming. People are going to forget. It's scheduling in December is basically impossible. And now we have 2 other meetings already coming up at the end of November, December. So we're not doing anything until January. And hopefully when we come back in January, it's going to be a fresh start with people. Ken?
The thought I just had, and these things sort of rocket into my head when other people talk, which is why I like these kinds of get-togethers. We build on each other's ideas. But one of the things that's really important is to energize youth and younger people. Maybe we should be targeting people of school age, getting them involved. There's been some great protests that they've put together regarding climate change and things like this. It's time for the younger generation to sort of like take over this thing and use their energy and do something about it. I'm too tired to do anything anymore.
Yeah, I hear you. This is one of my 3 jobs, and this is one of the ones that doesn't pay me at all. And my wife and child would love to see me more, so I would love to have more help. We do have several students from University of Waterloo actually that have joined SAHA now, and they have their own groups that they're a part of in Waterloo, which have been reaching out to me to try and discuss some of the things that I've been working on with them. And then they're also looking to volunteer with our organization now, which is very helpful because they're in school for things like social services and for working on these kinds of projects. And they're young and hungry. They came and approached us to join. So that's great. I believe Nikki actually has a bit more to talk about on that one. I don't have the email up at the moment, but yeah, we are working with the University of Waterloo, or some of the members of Waterloo, but not the school directly. And I would love to get other young people in. If you know any, send them my email and I can use them. Okay, Ken, you're all good? Good. Is there anyone else that has any questions? I know Mike Sullivan has been popping up here talking about some discussions that he's been having with Matthew Rae on the definition of affordable. And if he'd like to talk on that, he can. If not, I'll just reiterate that up until 2020, the city of Stratford, every time they released their housing plans that were updated in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, etc., always 30% until the province started messing with it. And then it went to 80% of market. And that Matthew Rae has been coming out making statements like that it's been 80% of market for 20 years, and that's the CMHC asked for us to change it to this, and the CMHC defines it as 80% of market. That's not true. The CMHC still defines it as 30% of affordable. AMO still does. All of them do. That's what affordable is. The gaslighting that's happening with the changes is just it's upsetting at best, because this is our local MPP and this is the assistant to the housing minister, and the fact that he believes that he can tell someone like me what the definition of affordable housing was for the last 20 years is pretty upsetting because I'm pretty sure I know more about housing than the assistant to the housing minister. And that's bad because I fix trucks for a living and sell comic books. Y'all don't pay me to do this. Y'all pay him.
Did you want to reply, Mike? Yeah. Don't have to. It's cool. It's cool.
Well, he might not be able to get on a camera and video right now. Who knows? Maybe he's not camera ready. I don't know. But he's got lots of information coming out in there. If you want, you can always get in contact. We can give you some more stuff. But definitely send Mike or Matthew Rae an email and be like, how is affordable housing affordable for everyone if you don't base it off of their income?
Yeah, exactly.
Markets change.
I can speak if you need me to. I'm in a dark room, so I can't. I'm not on camera, but I was very, very upset by the promise from the minister to fix it. So I responded to the posting on the ERO and then sent that to Matthew Rae. Matthew Rae responded, but saying that's what everybody wanted. And it turns out that's just so much BS. And I don't know why he would be saying that, but it's just not true. And I don't know how to hold him to task except to not elect him next time. But he certainly was not, and maybe he's on the call. I don't know. But he certainly was not truthful with the statements he made about the fact that people were asking the minister to do exactly this. Essentially, what the new definition is, and this applies really only to builders building affordable, is that they can call it affordable and thereby have zero development charges from the city. So the city has to pay to put in sewers and water and that kind of thing, and roads on its own without help from the developer. The developer gets the free as long as they call it affordable, and the way to call it affordable is to build it in such a some class can afford it.
Breaking up a little.
Yeah, that's a really good point there too, is that what's happening right now at the provincial level with changing the definition of affordable, it is being done through the eyes of developers. And if this goes through, then all of our housing projects are basically just designed to work with developers and not designed to help the public. And that's not good. Jane Marie?
I was just going to say that was another way forward with helping the developers. And the other comment I had was Matthew Rae. That's what everybody was saying. Who's everybody? The people in the caucus or the people that are his constituents? We don't know who everybody was.
His statement of everyone was the AMO, the CMHC, and Stratford City. He's stating that the Stratford City had changed the definition of affordable 20 years ago. Which is just factually not true. With the CMHC, we responded with the actual definition from the CMHC. He just moved on from that and found something from the AMO. Yeah, it's quite a mess.
He needs to do a bit of research.
Yeah, that being said, guys, if there's any more, I can probably field one or two more questions, but then after that, I do have to go care for my loving wife and 2-year-old who are both deathly ill with COVID right now. And I'm the only person capable of giving them direct aid.
Bill, did you have something you wanted to say? No, guess not. Okay, well.
All right,
anyway,
awesome. I hope that I didn't overload anyone. I tried to keep this, I try to not just information dump like I normally do and try and keep it to just a few points this time. We will be in touch from SAHA specifically. We'll be in touch soon, especially in the new year. We're going to try and get some more community involvement and try and get one large main meeting where you can learn everything you want about this super exciting thing that is land trusts and affordable housing. And
remember that the SAHA page is on the Perth County Hub website, and you can get there by just going to the bit.ly link, say something SAHA will get you right to the front page.
Yes, please sign our petition. We're trying to get 10% of the voters out to
the page.
Present to council.
Yeah.
All All right,
Okay.
thank you so much. Have a great night. And thank you so much for the support and coming out even just to listen to me ramble. It's awesome that you're here.
Thank you so much, Jason.